before we start our next panel, we just want to, thank everybody once again for being here, but also understanding what we're actually doing. We're trying to build that bridge from the community to prisons, from prisons to community, right? So the solid bridge, something that you can walk over. Bridges are very powerful. And one of the things that, I always say, and no matter where I'm at and whatever venue I'm in, is that Connecticut for many years has done something right. They have mastered the way of locking people up, but we haven't figured out how to get people home. How to successfully get people home, get them out, and so they stay out. So with the help of everybody here, that all of you do this work in some shape or form, you contact with humans, whether they're getting out, on their way out, been out, struggling with mental health, addiction issues, whether you're a corrections officer, parole officer, each one of us have a role in how people transition back into the community. So I'm hoping that through these conversations, whether they're difficult, hard to hear, whatever, I'm hoping that you take this opportunity to shift gears and start to look at individuals as human beings and not just case numbers, inmates, and files. We want you to start looking at people as, hopefully, take those lenses and change them and start looking at people as human beings, because it's important. We're not responsible for how individuals go to prison, but as taxpayers, as community members, as human beings, we should care how they get out. With that being said, I'm going to welcome my guy, James Jeter, to the building. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Turn that mic off so I can get some love and say what's up, man. I ain't seen you in a minute. I see you brought Zelda. You got some people in the building. You got Erin in the building. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm holding up, man. How you doing, my guy?
We're shifting gears right now, man. We're going to talk about education. One of my, I see Zelda in passing. Before COVID, I would be in a group in McDougal and she'd be doing some work in McDougal and we just trying to change lives. I never get to really see her everyone, so we just wave. So how you doing, Zelda? Like, yeah, I'm still in this group. Sometimes the conversations be so intense, I can't even wave. I'm like, oh, that's Zelda. So, it's just an honor and a privilege to have you guys here. I appreciate you coming through. Education is everything to me, because if it wasn't for education, I wouldn't be sitting here or at some of the tables. Of course, I knew a lot of knowledge, but of course they wanted letters. Those letters behind my name get me to sit at different tables for some reason. So, and shout out to you guys and the work that you do. So I'm going to pass it on to you. Let's talk about it. Let's chop it up. Let's get it.
So hi, I'm James Jeter. I kind of like to leave with just leave it at that now. But for the sake of this panel, I'm formerly incarcerated. I served 19 and a half years from ages 17 to 36. During my incarceration, I was formally educated by the Wesleyan Center for Prison Education, where I was fortunate enough to build a pretty extensive network. Crucial to that network is my homie Zelda, who from my first day home has really been a huge supporter in my corner. And when starting this program, she definitely made room for me in not just at YPI, but in design of the program. So, that's what brings us here today. And I don't want to take up too much time talking about me. I really want to get to the panel, who I think is the leaders in the thought process of what this is in our state, and where this can go. And so I want to have our panel introduce themselves, their work, their affiliation with any school, and then we'll move into we'll tackle some hard questions that I've been pondering on how to stumble everybody. I want to stumble everybody today. No, I don't. Right. I don't have an order of who we're going to introduce. Jump in and let these great people know who you are, because you all do very amazing things.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm Dr. Erin Corbett. I run the Second Chance Educational Alliance program, which operates out of the McDougal Walker Correctional Institution. We have a credential seeking pathway that we have 25 students enrolled in, and we have a continuing education pathway that offers not-for-credit college readiness courses, and we have about 40 students there. In addition to working with Second Chance, I co-founded an organization called the Jami Sisterhood that is designed to provide a professional kind of networking space for Black folks kind of generally, but Black women in particular who are in the higher ed and prison space. I consult with Ascendium in doing an external evaluation for some of their state level optimization of higher ed and prison work. I've also worked with Lumina Foundation on similar work across 9 states, and recently helped to launch Project Freedom, which is a project that focuses on HBCUs that want to start higher ed and prison programs. And that is work that is supported by Laughing Gull. And in my spare time, I collude with Zelda on state level stuff and how to get policy folks involved. Before settling into Second Chance full time, I worked at the Cattell Center for Health, Equity, and Justice. So there are a lot of folks that I see. I saw Miss Barbara. I love seeing her participating in things. And so there's definitely an organizing capacity to a lot of the work that I do in this space. So I just want to thank those that came before me for laying the groundwork for that.
Hi, I'm Allie Cisco. I'm the program manager at the Wesleyan Center for Prison Education. We operate within Cheshire Correctional and York Correctional. We offer a pathway to an associate degree through our partnership with Middlesex Community College, and a pathway to a bachelor's in liberal studies through Wesleyan. And really excitingly, that bachelor's degree is relatively new, and we just are matriculating our first cohort of BLS students right now. The program has been around for about 11, 12 years at this point. And I'm really, really excited and grateful to be in conversation with you all today.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Zelda Roland. I always forget the doctor, not a doctor of medicine. But while I was finishing my PhD here at Yale, I got involved in the Wesleyan Center for Prison Education, which Allie just mentioned, where I met James and some of the most, extraordinary, brilliant students I'd ever encountered, even though I'd been teaching at Yale for several years at that point. And they encouraged me to start a new higher education in prison program at Yale, really understanding before I did the impact that bringing Yale to this field could have nationally, the way it could transform the university, and the way it could reach a greater number of students who have not been able to access higher ed programming in our state. So we've been offering credit-bearing Yale courses to incarcerated students in partnership with the Department of Corrections since 2018. We've offered classes at McDougall, as well as a few years back at Manson Youth Institution. And this year we are launching a degree partnership. We will be offering both an AA and a bachelor's. And we've facilitated over 81 credit-bearing Yale course enrollments for incarcerated students in our state. And we're hoping to return to face-to-face instruction just as soon as we can.
So it's wonderful to be here. I'm Linda Meyer. I'm from Quinnipiac University. And we have a sort of campus-wide called the QU Prison Project that involves a whole bunch of our schools and projects from all over the university. One of our projects is a traditional associate's degree program. We've taught more than 25 4-credit free courses to 70 women at York CI since 2011. We partner with Trinity College and Charter Oak State College to offer the associate's degree that they can get either while they're incarcerated or through Charter Oak after release. In addition, we've been running Inside Out model courses at York, Garner, and Carl Robinson. And we've also offered traditional courses at Garner and Carl Robinson most recently. We'd like to expand that program if we can, and hopefully transfer our associate's degree program to those institutions as well. Our Inside Out courses have included an extremely innovative program involving campus-based medical students who are learning alongside women in prison about the connection between poverty and health issues. And then the students partner together to design projects for improving women's health in prison. In addition, our social work department has gotten into the act. Amber Kelly from our social work department provides some not-for-credit trauma coping mini courses. She provides those courses at both York and Cheshire for both men and women, and she's been doing that work by Zoom during COVID for formerly incarcerated women and women who've experienced trauma. We've also been continuing our program at York during COVID with correspondence courses, which has been a challenge, but we're moving people closer to their degrees. Finally, we have developed some reentry partnerships. We have a reentry partnership with New Haven's Emerge program, with New Haven Women's Resettlement Working Group, with the Judy Doran Performance Project, with Trinity's Free to Succeed program, and with the Community Foundation of New Haven. Our occupational therapy students have gotten involved, and they've designed, tested, and are implementing a reentry program in New Haven that's currently on ground, despite COVID. We also have a legal clinic that's representing formerly incarcerated people with reentry issues like housing, ID, child support, certificates of employability, and pardon applications. So, we're working toward a 360-degree model, which is what I really want to get to. It's still, we finally got a really generous grant recently, so we're going to be able to hire somebody as wonderful, hopefully, as Zelda and Allie and Erin, who will be able to run our program and really professionalize it. So we're looking forward to hiring that person and really kind of moving into that space in a new and more thoughtful way.
All right. So thank you. So Andrew Clark decided that it'd be a great idea to have me moderate a panel. All right. I'm not sure that was his best moment.
That was Daryl.
Okay.
But of course, James, of course.
You're gonna get.
Let's go, man. Let's get it. You need some help? What's going on?
Nah, I got this. I'm just preparing everybody. I'm laying out the disclaimer because I'm gonna be me. So I just want to make sure that
That's why we got you right before lunch. We need you to be you. Man. Listen, let's go. Let's get it.
So
Daryl to start all my classes.
I want to start this conversation in a very broad manner, but I do want to I want to tell a story that very briefly that it just happened to me last night, and it's just been on my mind, so I want to tell it. My brother is in town from Guyana, and I went to pick him up, and he had been with my grandmother's, and he goes, "You won't believe what Grandma gave me," and I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're not going to believe this." He goes, "She tells me I found your father's social security card and his driver's license here." And he goes, "This is what she gives me." So he gives it to me upside down with his social security card on one side and taped together. When I turn it over, it's not his driver's license. It's his Cheshire Correctional ID. Right? And so I'm looking at this face that looks like mine and my brother's, and I'm looking at the date. It's September 30th, 1987. And I'm like, wow, it took less than 10 years. My father passed away in 89. So it took less than 10 years for me and my brother both to be incarcerated. Right. And for both to wind up in Cheshire. And I think about that in context of this very broad first question I'm asking. But I think about it in context of what was taken from me when I lost my father. And some of that ties into education. It's not that I lost education, it's that I'm of the belief that our educational system, the structure of it, what it does to the Black body is that it creates absence. It creates absence of narrative in any light of intelligence, patriotism, of excellence. I get to learn about everybody else, and the forming of this country and the forming of history and the thought process that govern the Western world. And I don't see me in any of it. And before I had the language to speak on the part of the language, to understand that I don't see me, I always felt it. Right. And so you grow up with this thing that you can't explain yet. that puts you on a path to some light always be redeemed, or some light always find something in you of value, and you forget that, well, the education shows you were never deemed anything to be redeemed. And so I want to ask, because we're talking about prison, and I think prison becomes the catch-all for those who wrestle with these type of identity issues. What is the purpose of higher education in prison? I'm not going to give you by the order. Y'all just going to go get the question. I'm not. So
I'll jump in.
Okay.
I think that that question of what is the purpose of higher ed in prison sort of lends itself to asking what is the purpose of higher education, period. When we think historically, we have to remember that higher education was about the creation of the gentleman scholar, right? This very antiquated, supremacist, missionary, civilize the savages notion of what it takes to create a productive, contributing citizen. Higher education has been weaponized for many years to kind of keep that image going, to keep saying, this is what you need to have in order to be able to function in these sorts of different capacities. And as a result of that, because the gentleman scholar as an ideal has also been just very white, it becomes critical to make sure that what we're bringing inside the prisons, but also just doing on our campuses, is far more expansive than what we may have, learned as educators when we were in school. And so part of what I have done over the years that Second Chances run is I've done pretty deep dives into my own syllabi for the courses that I teach, and have switched out a lot of, the canon texts, and, we have to read Shakespeare because, and started to ask the question, who are some other authors and voices and experiences that also speak to the human condition, where we are as people and how we define ourselves, and how can I incorporate more Black, Indigenous, women, femme identifying voices into that kind of structure. And so part of the response to that, the response has been overwhelmingly positive from the student perspective. I can't say what the DOC thinks of it, because I would argue they probably haven't read any of the books on my syllabus. But I think from the student perspective, I've had students that read Baldwin for the first time in my class. And for those of you familiar with James Baldwin, reading The Fire Next Time can literally be life-changing. And so there were quite a few students that were like, I see myself in this text and wish I'd had it when I was in high school or wherever as a younger person. Maybe my life would have been different. Maybe I would have made different choices. Maybe I would have known that there were other people experiencing and feeling the same things that I was feeling in the similar kinds of circumstances. And so I think kind of disrupting that gentleman scholar narrative and turning it into how do we facilitate the cultivation of sort of the globally aware citizen, I think is the right direction for us to be moving in, again, in higher ed overall, but certainly in higher ed in prison.
I think everything Erin just said is 100% absolutely right. And just to echo some of that, we've had students who, let me go back a second and say, what Erin's talking about with syllabus, with creating syllabi that are looking at these transformative texts that students have never had access to before is really crucial. And when our students read Frantz Fanon a couple of years back, they said, we had a couple students who felt angry and sad, why is this the first time that I'm encountering these texts, and really resentful about the education that they'd experienced to date. And the thing that I think about with bringing Yale courses and the education that we have deemed appropriate for college students, this very elite class of college students to prepare them for entering the world or entering the job market. When we bring the same courses and the same experiences, and not just classes, but also advising structures, support structures, help in doing, thinking that sort of like thinking about what you want to do and who you want to be, and how choosing a class really gives you that sort of agency in thinking about what your life could be. Being able to bring that experience of higher education, not just like dosage, we've made this course available in this package, but bringing that whole experience of higher education to students, both on campus and in prison. It really is about helping people understand. I have written right here on my wall something that James said a couple of years back, but I keep it on my Post-it right behind my computer. But prison is about who you were. College is about who you could be, right? It's like what Erin's saying. The question is, what does higher education do? And that's the answer to the question, what's the purpose of higher ed in prison, period.
I think these have been really brilliant and instructive comments for me. I think what I would add to that is that I often turn that question of what this is for back towards students, because no group of students anywhere is a monolith. Their reasons for participating in higher education is going to be as broad as a utilitarian perspective around earning power and around reentry and around whatever else, to different kinds of the epistemological frameworks that Zelda and Erin are talking about how do we interact with self and world and with others in ways in which we are present and embodied. And so I think having the spaciousness to say that, to encompass that diversity of perspective of a more utilitarian material approach to what is this education for me? What is it for my family? And then also to say what is it for in towards the end of being nourished and disassembled and put back together in the ways that Zelda and Erin have been talking about. And I think also encouraging the perspective that higher education, in and of itself, is something that we should turn a self-reflexive lens on. One of the non-credited correspondence workshops that we did over the fall was Equity in the Academy, and we read Ebony and Ivy, as well as Sarah Ahmed's On Being Included, which is about diversity work in higher education and the limitations of that. And I said to students, this is just because this program exists and you are participating in it doesn't mean that you can't and shouldn't tear it apart. And that the same kinds of critical lenses that we're bringing to the canon, that we're bringing to the prison system, we should also be turning on higher education and on how we structure and talk about this, because we can't make it more reflective of who you are and what you need, and that broad amalgamation of perspectives, if we aren't applying the same critical skills that you're cultivating in other avenues towards this. So I think I would co-sign all of the things that Zelda and Erin said, and then would also say that it's about that articulation of self and being able to critique even the things that even the tools in our own hands and in students' own hands, and to think what are both the material impacts that higher education can bring in a person's life, and also these broader questions about self-identity and interrelationship between text, between communities, between people.
I love all these answers. I think I would just want to say, sorry. I just wanted to say that as the oldest person on this panel, I've had to retrain myself. And of course, part of what higher education is about is co-learning, is letting your students teach you, is participating in the wider conversation that's going on in the world. I mean, that's a gift to be able to sort of get in touch with what's happening out in the world. That's always what education's about. And so that self-criticism that you learn in a classroom is certainly something that we have to keep learning ourselves. And for me, as an old person, I always joke with my constitutional law students that I had to unlearn the Miss Clemma version of Reconstruction history when I was teaching the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And I had to, and I didn't realize that I was carrying around all of these 8th grade tropes that I had learned in her class about carpetbaggers and, the fact that, we had to sort of, heal the country. And so I had to unlearn all that, and I didn't even know that was affecting me. So I do think that it's really important for us all to bring that self-critical lens and to unlearn a lot of what we learned, and to be willing to learn again and be willing to learn from our students. And I have to say, I've learned probably a lot more from my students than I've taught to them. So this is a project of co-learning.
And on that, so like so here's the other question that I have, right? So I'm currently I'm not in school this semester. I need to take a semester off. It's hard being grown and going to school sometimes. But my degree is self-design, right? I don't think it'll ever lead to employment. Like that's not why I'm even. I've never even crossed my mind in finishing my degree. I really believe that I'll make ways. I have gifts that'll make ways with or without it. However, it is part of the cell of education. But in my experience over the last 4 years in April of being home, I've seen more of the guys that I've gone through the education, the higher ed system, return to prison. And a large part of that is that they haven't been able to find gainful employment. They haven't been able to find employment that fits their skill set and their brilliance. And it's been disillusioning on some aspects to them, because whether it's sold by the program, it is sold by the institution of higher education. And it is a hope that they all cling to that doesn't always materialize. How do you see? I want to bypass. I want to bypass two of my other questions. We'll come back to them. But I really want to talk right now about in the model, a functioning model of what higher ed should be and what it should encompass. Given that you're educating in DOC is reportedly, supposedly responsible for reentry and transition, where do you see the role of academia, especially your particular programs, and to your students? How do you see what are the lines you draw on accountability and responsibility to your cohorts?
I mean, I think this is, we talk about this a lot, but I'll open up some of our conversations to this public venue forum. But, I think we treat each student, for you and me, James, like our mission is to treat each student coming home as we would treat a Yale student graduating and going on the job market and looking for employment. And that means leveraging our social networks, our connections, the different centers or programs that were affiliated with Yale. And that also means, looking at what someone's actual interests are, and not saying this is a list of jobs that are open to people who are formerly incarcerated, or, this is a job that has been prepared for, the reentry roundtable, and, please, if you're getting out of prison, then you should apply for this, and to, I think, what we've kind of developed is a really kind of thoughtful, careful, system where we are working with people. We're talking to them after each round of classes. We're reassessing what, you want to do. We have a student who, a year and a half into our program took his first art class and was like, holy crap, I'm an artist, and like through this kind of process of being told that he was allowed to think of himself as an artist. And just, I remember the first day of that first class, the teacher came in and said, I have a secret, like if you want to be an artist, you just say, I am an artist, and then you're an artist. And then, suddenly we had artists and people who can really thoughtfully kind of each day rethink their position in the world and what it is that they want to do. And maybe it's, of course we have Yale students who are also graduating and saying, I want to be an artist. And you have to sit there and be like, well, maybe you should think about what your backup plan is if you can, but really use that interest and that passion to say, okay, well, there are museum jobs, there are these kinds of jobs. And, our role as representatives of Yale is to bust open those job opportunities on our campus where our students getting out or students getting out of other programs, can say, I don't want to just go into this, list of reentry oriented jobs and figure out what my, what is, feasible, but I want it to be based on my experience and to, have this kind of range of opportunities that are tailored to how I envision my life. So that's, I don't know. I think I went way off the question, but.
I think I absolutely echo what Zelda is saying. I think the job kind of paradigm is just kind of equally as gross to me as the recidivism paradigm that is very much in this space. And so while, absolutely it was part of it's all, the employment and recidivism has been the anchor of kind of the advocacy part of this work. But because we all are becoming more educated about the collateral consequences of conviction and what those look like very specifically at a state level and a federal level, we need to start, again, shifting the focus to, these kind of broader questions of the role of higher ed generally. I think another piece that's a little bit more nuanced is, we have sort of a cadre of programs and folks that, certainly understand the importance of having systems impacted people as just part of their organizational structure. But what happens is we don't change the job requirements. So we're still actually disempowering people with records. So, for example, if someone has been in for 20 years, their work history is going to look very different than someone who has not been incarcerated and has been in the employment marketplace for 20 years. To then open a position that says we are looking for at least 15 years of experience doing X, Y, and Z is going to automatically exclude that person who did 20, right? And so how do we start to think about, among those of us that know this is what needs to happen, how do we start to think about operationalizing the skills, the skill mastery that incarcerated folks have developed during their time inside, and think about the ways to translate that into the skills that are needed for a particular position. We can't keep asking for the same requirements and experience, knowing that we want to attract people who aren't going to have the same kinds of experiences because they have been incarcerated. And I think this particularly comes into play with folks who have been incarcerated for longer periods of time. There is a tendency in the higher ed and prison field to focus solely on minimum security facilities, maybe medium security facilities where folks are tending to serve shorter sentences and they're getting out sooner. What I appreciate about McDougal is that most of the folks there are going to be there for a while. And what that does is it allows us to really be thoughtful about crafting, okay, when you're released, if you're released, right? Because that's the other piece, right? We have to understand that there are people who are not going to be released, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to education. For those who are going to be released, how can we take what we know about the collateral consequences of conviction, what we know about job opportunities that are happening in the broader space, and how do we build a credentialed pathway to get folks to that space if that's what they ultimately want to do when they're finished.
So before Linda and Allie jump in, I actually want to ask something to that, and then you two can respond to the second half. So because I think this is something that pops up in the program fight, because there's a fight at times, and not between the college programs, between other programming that wants to come in DOC that are within DOC, and then you get like, so one of the pushbacks, and I don't think it should be a pushback, but I know that it's one argument is that well, the guaranteed skill set is in skilled labor, you know, which I wholeheartedly actually agree with. I don't think I think it's presented in a negation situation where one has to negate the other. Well, I think that, you know, the greatest philosopher I know is my brother, and he's a master steel sheet medalist, you know. So, you know, I know that there's an amalgamation somewhere in there. Do the programs see that though? Do the programs see the need to, in expanding the opportunities for careers and other means of, you know, financially taking care of yourself, to look beyond their structure? Because for the most part, these are liberal arts colleges. And so, you know, and facing the reality of, yes, I'm giving my students a liberal arts education, yet the world, like Erin perfectly just framed, has already created new hurdles that will lock them out. Is there any room for the amalgamation or partnerships that would like build skill sets, you know, brain and body at the same time?
You know, I think that's always the issue. We're working on it. And I would love to have comments from anyone who's on this panel about how to do this better. I mean, one of the things that I think we need to work on, and we're not doing it, is to unlock the career resources on campus for students who are coming from incarceration. And we definitely need to do a better job of giving those giving access to those resources for all of our students. The other piece of that, I think, is a piece that's sort of a problem for any liberal arts graduate, no matter what. And so you're right, there's always this sort of, how do you get the experience without having the experience problem? And you're right that we need to partner, I think, with programs inside that are more vocationally oriented so that people can get both of those skills at once. But I also think that this is a problem for our students on campus who are doing liberal arts degrees. And so, you know, we're trying to create internships, opportunities for them on campus, and we need to sort of mimic that approach inside.
Yeah, so I was never advocating for partnering with DOC. That is not my. So my opinions are my opinions. I'm not putting anyone else on this panel or anyone else in this conversation. However, you will not learn You will not learn a trade successfully, nor will you be credentialed in the trade through DOC. That's kind of more of the point, is that I know that you get the pushback that this works, it doesn't work, right? But I think that the capable hands of making it all work are on this panel, are those who are actually at the forethought, at the front of the thinking around education and prison and reentry outside of, you know, crime and punishment. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm not like, because I wasn't saying that. All right.
I think the point about leveraging main campus resources and creating a sense of that a stronger sense of linkage, that like these students are like students of this university. They are on like at a different site, but that access to the kinds of resources that are leveraged for main campus students, like these other folks are also entitled to. And that thinking about what the specific needs, like as Zelda was saying, sort of like after each round of classes, sort of like reevaluating with folks. Like we recently initiated a conversation with our students about and whether or not they are coming home relatively soon or whether or not that's a distant possibility, asking them, what is it that you anticipate, and having this now be a new regular check-in that we're doing, so that not only they can have a sounding board opportunity to like refine those thoughts in dialogue with us, but also to say, what is it then, given that these are the things that you've surfaced, these are the questions that you have, what does that mean for us responsively as a program, then building relationships in those areas or asking the university questions. And so having the work that we are doing to like think more deeply about reentry, because this absolutely is like, this is a big area for growth for CPE, of being guided in that, not by an abstract idea of like, what is reentry? What does higher ed do? But to say like, okay, XYZ student has said these things. I'm also hearing these other students, like these concrete thoughts and needs. And so proceeding from there, and so making sure that there's like a responsive dynamism there, not only between us as like student and administrators, but also how does the program develop and reshape over time, and like where is it most strategic to put pressure, perhaps on the university, perhaps on DC, like being guided by students' feedback in that.
Well, I just want to jump in and say, I think everything everyone said is totally right. And we do a similar thing. We, reassess students' reentry needs, thinking about how you want to be supported. But like, I don't know, I just think, especially considering that a lot of our students are coming from long sentences, like, what do they need? Money and time, funding to have space and time to, have a year off, like a student who would be, leaving college and who needs a year to just like process what they've gone through might need. If we're really looking at equity across campus and inside, I think like money and time, like space, right? I see in the chat, mental access to like mental health counseling. Like our students are coming out of a lot of trauma, and the reentry centers want to throw them into a really intense job and like say, thrive. I don't know. It's really hard for me to imagine. I just think money and time. I'm going to keep saying it.
Yeah, I need a lot of money and a lot of time. So I agree with that one.
I think that's, we're launching a reentry fund at CPE, which is, the idea is that we're going to like try to provide and it's modest because it's like a new thing that we're doing, but to be able to offer like stopgap money, material support for people, saying like, you have this need, here is this money for this. Because I think to your point, Zelda, ultimately at the end of the day, when people are looking to heal or they're looking for safety, for security, that like actually getting money into people's hands so that they can make those choices for themselves and have that agency, like they're going to know how best that should be like allocated in their own life and like where those needs are. And that, there's a lot of abstract conversations about like support and what support means. And there are ineffable and intangible things that community can offer. But like at the end of the day, like security is predicated on like a material security. And so like, I think that was a really important point to raise. Thank you for doing that.
Can I touch on the accountability part of your question, or are you saving that for another time?
No, please. So
I think this is a really critical aspect of the question, because I would argue that DOCs feel that we are accountable to them. Like they want to review everything. They want to be able to just ask for random data points that they don't really have a clue about what they're asking for. And they very much want to control and manage the influx of what schools are in, where they go, deciding who gets which classroom space, et cetera, which is trash. It is absolute trash for like reasons that we can kind of all understand implicitly. But most egregiously, or most saliently rather, is the fact that we are accountable to our students. Like, period, hard stop. If I'm out here saying stuff, perpetuating things that I could not bring back to my students and be like, this is what I said, this is what I did, this is how I'm trying to frame this topic, then I shouldn't have done it in the first place. I might even, I think this is just me, I might err like extra on this side. Like, I tell the students everything. Like, they're going to know about this panel because I try to keep them up to date on events. They know about Johnny Sisterhood. They're part of the research team for the Zendium grant I'm on. Like, the way that you embed students into this work is critical. We can't, a lot of times programs will tokenize their students and just kind of tout the things that students say that support what they're doing. I can give you a long list of the critiques that my students have offered, because those critiques make the program better. They make the program stronger. They make me a better educator, a better administrator. And it's an inordinate amount of emotional labor that our students do for us to make our programs better. And so I think when we talk about accountability, we have to understand that we are accountable to them and them only. And the DOC needs to get out of the way.
So it's so fun. So you did touch on one of the questions I was going to ask, and that was how important and integral is the incorporation of the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated in the work you're doing, and especially in your particular program, the models that you are constantly refigurating, because they constantly need to be refigured. But I don't want to jump into that question yet, because so what I want to ask. I want to ask about the hurdles, because, hey, Josh, so briefly, we have Josh. I want Josh to introduce himself, because Josh is on the panel. Josh is a very busy man. I want to take a minute. Josh, introduce yourself.
I'll be very quick. Sorry, we have session today, and everything about this session is a technological nightmare. I'm on multiple computers, multiple Zooms. Hey, everybody. How's it going? I am the chair of higher education this year. And, of course, a lot of the work that I've been doing has been in the justice realm. So this panel has been great so far from what I've been able to hear. I'm going to kick it back off to you, James.
Okay, so and I definitely want you to comment on this next question. For me, one of the hurdles around higher ed in prison, and because we've talked about the structure of the programs and reentry, and you can't talk about these things. I'm glad Allie brought it up. The new fund that CP is starting, but that's the part. Your programs are independent programs where you don't have funding. You don't receive state funding. You don't receive tax dollars. You are raising your own money. And how do you deal with the constant challenge? Because I think it's Linda, you said it best when you talked about having to look at what had been configured in your head from 8th grade, right? And how to undo it. How do you deal with the challenges of support from very, liberal, progressive people who will give you money or lend that type of financial support to your program when you look to expand the scope of your work? Like because for me, when I think about college, I think college works in these ways. It's an institution. And as a system, I really didn't understand college till I came home and started going to college. And what I've learned is that college does entry prep into college. Students have access to so many resources to equip them to deal with this change in their life, right? But they also have transition prep where they're preparing students to leave campus, right? And that's highly supported throughout the college network, right? From people who have gone out and done well, they come back, they hire, they hold resource events. But when you're talking about a prison population now, what are the hurdles you're facing when trying to structure higher ed in prison and getting people to fully understand that it's bigger than the classroom? Like your funding, like what are the hurdles? And I'm not ask you to name anybody, like, or any, just like, what are some of the hurdles you have come across in trying to move the work forward?
Well, I haven't had as much trouble with funders. Funders have sort of understood that it needs to be a 360-degree process. They're kind of getting that understanding. I think the hurdle is, being able to integrate folks on campus with folks coming out of prison. And that takes a lot of work on sort of institutional culture and making sure that we've got structures in place and support structures in place on campus that make those interactions good and helpful and not discouraging and traumatizing. So we have a lot of work to do on culture inside the campus, and that's something that is going to take a lot of effort, a lot of attention.
Most of the hurdles that I've encountered have been logistical hurdles. So much like Linda was saying, I don't have any problems with funders. They understand what's involved, but literally just the mechanics of getting in contact with someone at the DOC to talk about classroom space, or getting in touch with someone to talk about, okay, how can we get a virtual classroom? For example, I've been having the same conversation about virtual classrooms with the DOC since 2017. And it is only now that those conversations are being moved forward even a little bit, except they've actually moved forward faster with other institutions. And so there's this discrepancy between who the DOC is talking.
And this is,
that's the best frozen pose I ever seen. Like, I never could get mine. They're always with my mouth open and something, but if we can wait till Erin comes back and just keep it moving.
Definitely.
I would echo what folks are saying about, I think that accountability piece that Erin was talking about before, with like, how does DOC narrativize the value of the program? How does DOC narrativize like your metrics of success, whether they're communicating those to you or not, right? Like, there are things that are explicit, and then just as many that are implicit and not spoken, and you kind of figure out only after you've like, oh, I see, that was a mistake. Let me reel that back maybe. But, and then also as Linda was saying, with the university culture of, I think I've noticed that sometimes people think that they're like, well, we do this program, it exists. That's buy-in. Like, we've done it, it exists. And that question of integration into the university, and that question of, I think that navigating those logistical poles that people have been articulating of maintaining the integrity of how, and even then there's like as we've been talking about, like the idea of like what higher ed in prison is like a slippery category. So like, how do we maintain like an accountable relationship to students and an internal sense of integrity about what it is that we're doing, and not allow it to become something that increasingly gets pulled in the direction of like a more carceral extension of like, well, we check these program metrics for DOC, and then, that's what it becomes. And then also that question of like navigating those relationships at the university, and saying that like the fact of the program is not the end of this conversation. Like, that's the beginning of the conversation. And then increasing that sense of like, well, what are these students entitled to? If, you can't say like, well, we're applying, they get this credential and that means that they're a part of it. It's like, that's not what that means. So I think those conversations are a big part of how we conceive of it also.
Erin, you back. Let's please finish.
Sorry about that. I don't actually remember where I left off, but I do remember something that I wanted to make sure that I added. Part of what I believe is that DOCs operate under their safety and security mandate through a divide and conquer sort of framework. So the more that they can keep people separate and apart and not talking and not organizing, they sort of maintain this sense of control over what's happening. And the way that manifests itself or can manifest itself when it comes to higher ed and prison programs is they will pit programs against each other and say, you can't have this classroom because Quinnipiac is going to be here. Or Quinnipiac, you can't have this classroom because Wesleyan's going to be here. Yale, you can't have this program because Second Chance is going to be here. Second Chance, you can't have this classroom because Asnuntuck is going to be here. When in reality, when I show up to the facility, it's always like 5 empty classrooms. So, I guess I'm not supposed to be able to use my eyeballs and see. But when we think about the ways that we can really leverage our collective power, it starts to become obvious that there needs to be some kind of organization among the higher ed and prison programs to say to the DOC, this is not what we finna tolerate anymore. Like, we know what the classroom capacities are. We have the eyeballs and can see them. And this is how these things need to work out in order to maximize space, increase access, do all of the things that higher ed should do and higher ed and prison should specifically be doing.
So, I have a question for Josh in line with these things that everyone's talking about, and I want to point out something. Like, in my experience with DOC, I am a DOC expert. All right, I have a PhD in DOC. And what I used to witness is the biggest issue in DOC to me is that there's so much. It's the amount of power that is invested in an officer. The amount of power and control over my everyday life, right? It's not that the power, that part of DOC is systemic to DOC, is that one CO can dictate and control my entire life on his shift, my complete movement at his discretion, right? And I'm sure everyone has experienced that when you have students who can't get down because the officer didn't just let them out, like in the most simplest ways. He just decides, I'm not letting you go to school today, right? But on a much larger level is the pushback and the shift of culture. Even when when those at the top do desire in these rare moments and occasions to actually shift culture, the pushback from those who work in DOC, the officer, is so strong that it quells all the change. And there's tactics. You can slow down the count, right? Like little tactics that really throw off a prison that reinforces where the power lies in the system, right? And it's super problematic to change in the system. I remember I always questioned, why is CP only allowed to give us daytime classes when they can double their student enrollment if you open up the school at night? Oh, we don't have any officers down there. Well, you have officers in the South End hallway. That's their assignment. You have 4 South End classrooms that are empty. So like just the small hurdles that the officers feel like, well, I'm not working the hallway with all that movement. It's kind of your job, right? So how does the state, like, what is the possibility with, like, in hearing these hurdles and knowing the struggles that people who are coming in to do this type of lift, this type of work, how does the state respond in a way where this is a State Department, it has its mandates, but outside of that, like beyond, because it moves beyond that, but outside of that, how does the state intervene to make it more conducive for real change, like to move corrections from just correction?
I think it's going to be stories, and it's going to be making sure that people like you who have the stories then also get connected to the advocates and the folk at the Capitol that have an idea of how to move things. Because what I'm realizing now is that no matter how long I'm here for, I'm still going to have just a bare understanding of the process. And especially being a legislator, we we cannot act with as much precision as much as the executive branch does. So every 4 years, what the DOC is going to do and not do is so dependent on things that are going to be outside of our control. And just hearing even just over the past minute with some of the things you were talking about, how much of that can we fix through the legislative process? How can we fix those interpersonal interactions that you have with folk that work for the DOC? And some of that's going to really stem from the governor down to the commissioner, down to the wardens, and then down to the staff. But the more things you bring to us as legislators, the more ideas we can have about fixing some things that are more systemic. But man, I am telling you, I'm in my 5th year right now. I'm a chair right now. I think I've learned just as much in the past 3 months as I've learned in the past 4 years cumulatively. And so I am just as much muddling through this process as anybody else. And so the best thing I can do is just to say, continue to make those connections and relationships with us, and then brainstorm with us, because legislators are not going to solve any problems. If you find people that are on board with you, the best we can do is help give you advice about how to move things through the process. But right now, I am just trying to keep my head afloat and try to make sure that the 20 or 30 people that have really great ideas are able to get their things through my committee. Because then even once it's through my committee, it's up to what's the will of the legislature writ large, what's the will of the governor, what does leadership specifically want. And so there's a 1,000 ways for an idea to die, but only one way for an idea to live. So just communicate.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up, because I do think this brings out a little bit of a tension between one of the really great points that Erin made, and that is we don't want to be co-opted as sort of the numbers crunchers for DOC and to sort of create their aura. On the other hand, unless they have a mission to make higher ed happen, and there's reporting requirements that say you get, dollars, or you get a sort of gold star on your report card if you've done these higher education programs, they're not going to happen. So there's a tension there, right? We don't want to be the numbers crunchers, and yet if you don't count it, then it doesn't happen. So in some ways you need that requirement of reporting requirement, or you need a accounting requirement from the top in order to sort of give wardens incentives to actually make this stuff happen. I don't know how you resolve that. It's a question.
I wonder also, I'm hearing a lot of different things about like institutional time and institutional memory and how time operates in a correctional context and in a legislative context and in like a government context within a program, that there are these incredibly small but momentous to an individual student or to a classroom environment, like whether or not someone's movement is delayed just long enough that they can't come down to a class. And so there's an issue of time in that moment. But then also, you can build a good relationship with an individual counselor. You can build, a working relationship with an individual school officer, and then that person is gone within 6 months. And you're back again and again. And so and then even to your point about, Josh, about having been in the role for 5 years, but learned as much in the last 3 months as you did in the previous 5, that the sense of our own learning curve as administrators, as people, and then sort of like the time scale of the way that nonprofit time works, and the way that grant cycle works. There's all these different ways in which that, you find yourself again as there's turnover even within the political structure at DOC, from the very top to the individual like frontline staff, that I think that there's this frustrating sense of like when you think that you know something, or you think that you've gained ground towards accomplishing something, a crucial person leaves, or somebody's term in the legislature ends, or and that's happening just on an individual. Yeah, well, so and so didn't come down to class today because they were held just long enough that now there's all this other facility movement, and they could come, but it would be an hour and a half late. If you can get them even called down. So I think that these questions around time and how you manage the incredibly minute time scales versus these incredibly longitudinal like agency-wide or institutional timescales, and like having to navigate all of those simultaneously, and like keep the memory of like something that happened that worked in the past. Like, wait, we did that. Why are we back at a place where we're trying to reinvent that? Is that like, I have no answer for that. That's one of like the biggest questions that I have about how to grow and how to like encourage mutual support when like that time just dissolves underneath you always.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I just a quick thing to add, like there's also just a real structural thing there where we're all operating under the auspices of volunteer programming. You know, we're treated as volunteers in the facility, and that's, you know, that's fine for safety and security purposes, but it really comes off, it's communicated to officers and to staff and to students that this is a leisure activity, right? And this is for fun. When in fact, it's not. It's crucial. It's important. It's just as important as everything else that's going on in there. And there needs to be some sort of real structural change to how we're managed by and with the DOC that also gives us the agency and respect of higher education institutions, that we know what we're doing, that we're representing a faculty and an administration, and we're going to do things the way that Yale does things on campus. And we can't give you, you know, we can't give a corrections officer the grades of a student or of a set of students. And, you know, we can't just, you know, observe the whims that the DOC exerts over volunteer programs, because it's just not what we're doing. We're trying to extend access to an existing, you know, accredited, you know, highly, you know, structured type of thing. And so I think that we need to figure out how to negotiate, you know, something other than a volunteer status for higher ed programs, and that we need to figure out some sort of scenario in which programs are given some level of respect and, you know, understanding that we know what we're doing and we should be able to run our programs, that we shouldn't have, you know, a media clearance unit that's rejecting the random Baldwin text, or, you know, that if if students are reading a text on campus, they should be able to read it inside. That they, you know, that letters should have legal status. This is something I'd like to start fighting for actually in our state, is to protect higher education mail or correspondence with the same protections that legal mail has.
I think another piece is, as I think Andrew put into the chat, you know, Pell is going to be restored universally for incarcerated students in the next 1 to 2 years. The timeline is just kind of whatever it is with the ed department, which means that DOCs are going to be kind of flooded with schools that are wanting to start programs that have not had programs in the past. And some of the trends that I've been seeing in the field kind of broadly with DOCs is that they are of the belief that they will be in the position to administer Pell to students. Like, they as an agency will be the ones getting Pell money for students, which communicates a profound misunderstanding of how higher education and financial aid works. And what many DOCs are not willing to do is work like genuinely collaboratively with higher ed institutions to make sure that the programs that come into the space are of high quality, that if there are, you know, institutions that are wanting to offer out-of-state programs. So if, you know, a college in Utah wanted to offer something in Connecticut, that there's an anchoring Connecticut institution that is able to serve in a planning and implementation capacity. Like, these sorts of things should be part of the conversations that are happening right now. But again, because DOC likes to be all about control at all times. And, you know, James, you're absolutely right. Like, at their discretion, depending on what they want to do, how they feel, whether their coffee was cold that morning, like, they want to be able to just manage all of that. And that's not the way it's going to happen, because that's not the way higher ed is set up. It's not the way Title IV is set up. It's not the way the Higher Education Act of 1965 is set up. Like, there are many things that point to, you know, DOCs believing this being just a large mistake. But the point I'm making is, as Pell rollout happens, the conversations around like explicit and overt DOC control are going to have to come up because of exactly what Zelda says. There are going to be guidelines that, try to ensure that what happens on campus is the same thing that happens inside the classroom in terms of rigor, intensity of reading, et cetera, et cetera. That is not anything that DOC has any idea about. It is something that is only in the realm of higher ed institution.
So before we go, I want to pose one last question. And it's so funny. I want to tell you a story, right, about just that. So I got put under investigation for passing out excerpt from Walden, right? And so, yeah, the most peaceful book written, like I got put under investigation as possibly inciting a riot because I was I was tutoring GED students, and I was telling them how in the book, when he talks about not paying taxes as his revolt and not partaking in the government that upholds slavery, and that all bright, like the most brilliant of our minds should be in prison, right? And so a teacher took this to a deputy warden and was like, he's inciting something. And so they called me down. They're like, what are you doing passing this out? I'm like, have you read it? They were like, no. Well, what are you doing passing this out, right? And these are the people that should be in charge of higher ed. But the final question is a question I want everyone to answer. Contrary to, I think, popular belief, when you go back to 8th grade history, the 13th Amendment did not emancipate. It did solidify the first legal definition of slavery, which it's not a thing that we like to tackle or talk about. We've deemed prison mass incarceration. It's a massive carceral slavery system, by definition, according to our Constitution. And I'm not one for prettying up the plantation, but in that light, what is abolition? And the second part of the question is, how does higher ed in prison fit into the narrative of abolition? Somebody gonna talk, please.
Well, this reminds me a little bit of a little bit of when I had a conversation with Mike Lawler about higher ed in prison, and I'm like, we need to have BA programs, and we need to have this and that, and he's like, we need to get people out of prison, and I was like, you're right. So there is a tension here, right? We're providing all of this education inside when we really need to be providing it outside, before and after, and hopefully not even have a during. And I think there is a tension there, and how much of our resources should be geared toward prevention. I just had a conversation with one of our prison project folks saying, we should be spending our resources on prevention. We shouldn't be spending our resources on prettying up the plantation, as you put it, James. So I think there is a sort of like tension there. And I don't know how to resolve it, except to say that I do think that mind is a terrible thing to waste. And I just hate not being there teaching folks who want to be taught. So, I hear that. I really do hear.
All right, so we're running low on time. I'm very unfairly ask all three of you to give me really good 1-minute answers.
All right, I'm just going to say, I'll be quick. I think, I see a lot of people in the chat were talking about, nothing about us without us, super important. I think if we're looking at, a future, a post-carceral future, then we need to think about who's going to be leading that future. And to me, I believe the people who are going to be leading in every sector, not just in criminal justice, are incarcerated today. That we can bring the experience that has impacted everyone across what we're living in, mass incarceration, and bring them to lead the transformation of every sort of sector in our society. Museum, I'm talking about everything. And that's what abolition means to me.
I think there's a necessary consideration of conditions of confinement when we talk about a broader abolitionist approach. And so, I think we have to resist in many ways the idea of like, we're not going to do anything until everything is abolished. Because what that means is we now have millions of folks who are under carceral supervision who are still not providing any skills to, still not providing opportunities for education and critical thought in this kind of more formal way. And so abolition, I think, has to have these two sides. There's the, free them all on the outside that we always need to keep working on. But there's also like, when you get free, here are some knowledge and skill sets that y'all will have to lead this world.
Yeah.
I think all of these are brilliant reflections. The only thing I would add is that, I think higher education in prison is a necessary thing so long as the students identify that it's necessary. And so long as they keep showing up for classes and signing up for classes and saying that it is a meaningful experience for them, then it remains necessary because they are the people at the center of it who are saying, I want this for whatever various reason I may want it, for whatever thing it gives me. And I don't have to know the answer to why they want it, right? They're entitled to that, to keep that interiority to themselves should they want to, or to share it if they want to. And so I return to the I get up every day and go to it because they tell me that they want it. And that I think the flip side of that is, as Erin was saying, that as Pell restoration happens and this becomes perhaps not a more attractive, money-making venture, being careful to always keep a critical lens on ourselves that it isn't just becoming another industry that props up incarceration, and that not, in this fight over space and saying there's this false sense of scarcity around space that, well, why don't we just build something that students could go to, and being incredibly careful of well, that's an extremely ugly response, right? That there should be nothing that we build onto for the sake of perpetuating what we do. And that's a question of changing the paradigms that people have been talking about and thinking about. How do we change culture without then saying, well, higher education as an industry then becomes irrevocably braided together with carcerality, and we justify expansion and we justify keeping people in for longer, and making sure that we are being strategic in the decisions that we make, not to behave in those ways, because those are not only not abolitionist interventions, they are actively supporting and propping up continued incarceration. So
I think all of you are right. And I knew you were gonna be right. I know you guys think about this stuff. I want to add something to that though. I want to add this to it as we're running out of time. When I went to parole under the juvenile parole bill that, Andrew and these guys helped put together, I went to a hostile parole board that wasn't looking to let me go. I went with 75 recommendations from academics, a 4.05 GPA, and job opportunities, which made it impossible for them to say no. Right? When one of my best friends went for a modification, and if you know anything about prison, you know how rare a modification is. He went 80% of his support was academia. Right. And to me, that's abolition work. I support higher ed primarily because I believe that it creates avenues of release. And just in the structure of itself, when in the hands of the people who are best at it. So I think it's wholly abolition work, as long as it's in the hands of those who are really thinking on this thing to see the tearing down of walls and the educating of people. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this panel. I hope you all gained something out of it, and I hope these discussions continue, especially amongst those here who I think it takes all of us to really push this issue beyond this conversation and into actual policy, because I do believe there are policy changes that need to be made that will help better structure education in DOC and DOC itself. So thank you guys.
Before you go, thank you, James. Thank you, everybody on the panel. You guys are great. Erin, I love your shirt. Love it. I got to
You got to tell us what that means. Someone asked in the chat.
Shirt. Huh?
What does it mean? Someone asked in the chat.
I answered a private message.
Oh, okay.
You got to find out that you don't know. You got to. I'll tell you about it later, brother. That's
Okay.
a good one, though. That was. I need that. I need that in my life right now. So what I wanted to say is, we've done this work on the inside, and I love the education piece. Like I said in my story, 10 years in and out of the prison system, education was definitely the key and the great separator for me, but not for everybody else. Because like James said, some people have taken the initiative, took college courses, got out and found themselves. I think nothing's worse than to get educated, do all the work, and then find yourself back in the prison system. That's one of my worst nightmares. And anybody that's been incarcerated, that's a reoccurring nightmare that happens. Like you think you're actually home doing all this great stuff. Like I think I'm on this Zoom and then I could wake up tomorrow in a cell. Like literally that's a dream that happens to most of us frequently, right? So one of the things that I was hoping to hear, or I'm excited to, at one point, my dream is to connect with one of the universities as a formerly incarcerated person with a master's degree and be able to teach. Because see, now you have lived experience and you have teaching. So there's a component, and you talk about how that transition happens. So when people are talking about how do you utilize your degree, how do you make it work? I mean, if COVID taught anybody, anything, it's how to reinvent yourselves. We've all had to reinvent ourselves in some shape or form. When you're in the prison system, you have to learn how to reinvent yourself before you come out. And those that didn't do it right or still perfecting their craft find themselves back in the system. So I'm hoping that that's further conversation. I love the way you guys, especially Erin, where you pointed out about the barriers that come in within the trying to deliver education inside the wall. Like we're trying to make better citizens, and there's barriers between, I don't have the key, we're waiting out in the lobby, you're doing all this stuff, all these things. And I think that it is a higher level. Like there should be no, once these people come in, that's, you know what I mean? Because the work that I've done in the prison was for free. There's no salary attached to it. I do it for the last 4 years because I want to, and I know the value it carries in helping others transition back into the community. So I was really excited for this panel, and I just want to say, I want to invite you, if you have time and it fits your schedule, to come back for the out-of-state justice reformers, because most of them are formerly incarcerated people who have written papers or worked directly with creating transition in California and Ohio and other states. So they've done this work. The work that we're doing, they've done it at a higher level, or, so it'd be interesting to hear from them. And if you guys come back, I'll definitely get you in the conversation so we could chime in, because we're trying to build this bridge. So
just in terms of that, Romero Lynn Ralston is Cal State Fullerton. She's formerly incarcerated. And same with Donovan Harris. I saw in the chat that take a look at the Ohio and California systems, and these are folks that are part of that. So even if it's not during the panel, we'd love to connect you with them afterwards.
Right. So with that being said, I think the DJ's back. I don't know where he was at. I think, he had to charge his ankle bracelet, right? So he had to recharge his ankle bracelet. We want to thank you, Mr. Jetter, for bringing up robust panel. Zelda, I'll just wave again like I normally do. Linda, it's always good to see you. Allie, Erin, plug me into the shirt. Let me hook me up. I already asked. We got to talk about some other stuff anyway, but 2XL, 3XL, depending if I had lunch or not, depending, other than that, DJ, you got something planned, or what you doing, man? You still charging your ankle bracelet? What's going on? And we just want to thank you. And then we're going to play a little music, and we're about to go to lunch. Those of you that, grab your lunch, grab your food, stick around, stay. We have a dance party. Zelda, best dancer. We got, whatever. We got that best dance contest going on, lunch dance. Linda, you really can't do it because I know that you won a couple of awards in dancing before. So we're not going to, that would be cheating to allow you to stay. But anybody's welcome. So that's what we're going to do. Andrew, you got anything else? Prepare people for the afternoon?
Just 1 p.m. We're talking about justice reinvestment. We're actually going to look at some systems that have, or a system, Louisiana, that's actually set out a scheme to reinvest after prison closures, and talk with other folks. And then as Daryl mentioned, the 220 out-of-state justice reformers, and then the quick fire advocacy updates. But in terms of this higher ed panel, I put in the chat, and I'm sure people are kind of getting sick of me talking about different systems, but I'm just saying in places where it works, it's not the correction system that runs anything, not healthcare, not education, not otherwise. And that not only ensures that the people that are professionally trained and able to do it are doing it, it also ensures transparency, because that means the doors are open and people that need to do that work are allowed to do it. So just a consideration. And I was really happy that Rep. Elliot was able to join us. Between him and Senator Haskell, I think you have some willing ears there and systems change. So we'd love to bring it to the Capitol, if not this session, next session.
DJ, let's go, man. Let's get him out of here, man. What you doing, baby? Let's go. Let's get it.
A friend of mine asked me to say some MC rhyme, so I said this rhyme I'm about to say. The rhyme was there, but then it went this way. Took a test to become an MC. And Orange became amazed at me, so Larry put me inside. We got to laugh. The children drove off and we never came back. Dave cut the record down to the bone, and now they got me rocking on the microphone. And then we talking autographs, and tears and laughs, champagne, caviar, and bubble bath. See ya, that's the life that I lead, and you sucker MC, and you I bleed. So take it back and move back, catch a heart attack, because there's nothing in the world that run no level like a cold chill at a party in the b-boy stand. And rock on the mic and make the girls wanna dance. Fly like a dove and come from up above. I'm rocking on the mic, call me Run Love.
Doors and roam all on the Coliseum floors. I stepped on stage at Live Aid. All the people gave and the poor got paid. And out of speakers, I did speak. I wore my sneakers, but I'm not a sneak. My Adidas took the stand of the world in there. With Mike in hand, I call to command. My Adidas in depot asking B. We make a mean team, my Adidas and me. We get around together, down forever, and we won't be happy for bad weather. My Adidas. My Dita, my Dita, standing on 2nd Street, funky fresh and yes, cold on my feet, with no shoestring in them. I did not win them. I brought them off the app with the black lead. I like shoes, water, that's why I brought them. A sucker tried to steal them, so and I walked down the street and rocked to the beat with bleed on my leg and bleed on my feet. And yo, now I'm just standing here shooting the gift. Me and Dita, my Dita, standing on 2 feet. My Dita, 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 Dita.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd like to welcome to the stage the lyrically acclaimed. I like this young man. So everybody in the house, give a warm round of applause for.
Start spreading the news. I'm leading today.
All right. I like that.
All right.
So everybody in the house, give a warm round of applause for the notorious B.I.G. The notorious B.I.G., ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for him, y'all. Wow. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Salt and pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. Hanging pictures on my wall. Every Saturday, rap attack Mr. Magic Molly Mall. I let my tape rock till my tape pop. Smoking weed and bamboo, sipping on private stock. Way back when I had the red and black lumberjack with the hat to match. Remember rapping Duke? The hard, you never thought that hip-hop would take it this far. Now I'm in the limelight cause I rhyme tight. Time to get paid, blow up like the world well trained, born sinner. The opposite of a winner. Remember when I used to eat sardines for dinner? Peace to Ron G, Brucey B, Kid Capri, Funk Master Flex, Love Bug, Star Ski. I'm blowing up like you thought I would. Call the crib, same number, same hood. It's all good, good. And if you don't know, now you know.
It's up to you, New York, New York, New
You a bad girl and your friends bad too. Oh, you got the swag, saucy drippin' swag too. You a bad. You a bad. You a bad. You a bad girl and your friends bad too. Oh, you got the swag, saucy drippin' swag too. You a bad girl and your friends bad too. Oh, you got the swag, saucy drippin' swag too. Oh,
I may be young, but I'm ready to give you all my love. I told my girls you can get it. Don't slow it down, just let it go. So in love, I'll give it all away. Just don't tell nobody tomorrow. So tonight, I'll do it every way. Because knocking till the morning light. We like to party. Hey,
Live.
we like to party.
Live.
We like to party. Your touch is driving me crazy, 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 crazy. I can't explain the way I feel. Top down with the radio on and the night belongs to us. Just hold me close, don't let me go. So in love, I don't care what they say. I don't care if they talking tomorrow. Cause tonight's the night that I give you everything. Music rockin' till the morning light. Cause we like to party.
set the scene, 3,000 degrees. Live.
Yeah, we got this, Chip. We got this. I got you, kid. Check out the mix.
Yo, we have some requests, man. You weren't even listening. Let's get it.
It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a strong rhyme to step to. Think of how many weeks shows you slept through. Time's up. I'm sorry I kept you thinking of this. You keep repeating your miss. The rhyme from the microphone solo with. So you sit by the radio, hand on the dial soon. Had to hear it, pump up the volume.
We're in this 2021, man. Old school block, on live, on live. Let's go.
When it's heard,
Let's get it.
your body can dance. So that takes a tempo like a river.
Flex and let it go.
Great morning, great family.
And I still come up with a people to swift, follow the leader. The mama come down with the baby that will make it.
We the electric slide to break business. Let's go. We're live, let's go.
I wanna rock right now. I'm raw bass and I came to get down. I wanna rock right now. I'm raw bass and I came to get down. I wanna rock right now. I wanna rock right now. I wanna rock right now. I'm raw bass and I came to get down. I'm not naturally known, but I'm known to rock the microphone because I get stupid. I mean outrageous. Stay away from me. It's contagious. I'm a winner. No, not a loser. To be an MC is what I choose. Ladies love me, girls adore me. I'm not you never saw me like the way that I rhyme at a show. The reason why, man, I don't know. So let's go.
Building Bridges 2021.
Yeah. Come on. I see no changes. Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, it's like worth living, should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor and even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to snatch. Cops give a damn about a need, bro. Pull a trigger, killing, he's a heat, bro. Get it to the kids who the hell cares. One less hungry mouth on the welfare. First ship them, don't let them deal with brothers. Give them,
I hope y'all listening.
kill each other. It's time to fight back, that's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark, now Huey's dead. I got love for my brother, but we can never go nowhere unless we share with each other. We gotta start making changes. Learn to see me as a brother instead of 2 distant strangers. And that's how it's supposed to be. How can the devil take a brother if he's close to me? I let it go back to when we played as kids and things changed. That's the way it is. Come on.
That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah. Oh, come on. That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah.
I see no changes. All I see is racist faces. Misplaced hate makes disgrace for races. We under. I wonder what it takes to make this one better place. Let's erase the wasted. Take the evil out the people, they'll be acting right. Cause both black and white and smoke tonight. And the only time we chill is when we kill each other. It takes skill to be real time to heal each other. And although it seems evident, we ain't ready to see a black president. It ain't a secret, don't conceal the fact. The penitentiary's packed and it's filled with black.
I'm gonna let this one ride out.
Some things will never change. Try to shove another weight, but you're staying in the dope game. Now tell me what's a mother to do. Being real don't appeal to the brother in you. You gotta operate the easy way.
I made a G today.
But you made it in a sleazy way. Sell it to the kid.
I gotta get paid.
Well, that's the way it is. Come on.
That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah. That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah.
We gotta make a change. It's time for us as a people to start making some changes. Let's change the way we eat. Let's change the way we live. And let's change the way we treat each other. You see, the old way wasn't working, so it's on us to do what we gotta do to survive. And still I see no changes. Can a brother get a little peace? It's war on the streets and a war in the Middle East. Instead of war on poverty, they got a war on drugs so the police can bother me. And I ain't never did a crime I ain't have to do. But now I'm back with the locks, giving it back to you. Don't let them jack you up, back you up, crack you up, and pimp smack you up. You gotta learn to hold your own. They get jealous when they see you with your mobile phone. But tell the cops I can't touch this. I don't trust this. When they try to rush, I bust this. That's the sound number 2. You say it ain't cool. My mama didn't raise no fool. And as long as I stay black, I got a stage strap. And I never
I'm
get
getting
to lay
goosebumps
back.
while this song
Cause I
is on,
always got to worry about the payback. Some book that I roughed up way back. Coming back after all these years. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. That's the way it is.
That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is.